Hey folks, Alan Saunders from Pittsburgh Sports Live for another episode of Pittsburgh Postgame. Pirates edition, the Bucks 4-3 losers to the Chicago Cubs on Easter Sunday in Wrigley, finishing their season opening 3-game series against the Cubbies with 1 win and 2 losses back-to-back coming after an opening day victory. I'm Alan Saunders, joined by Zac Weiss of Pittsburgh Sports Now. And Zac, obviously not the way the Pirates wanted to start this season at 1-2. You want to get off to a good start. Everybody does, but the way the Pirates started this season with a relatively disappointing start from promising young pitcher Mitch Keller and an injury suffered by star third baseman Ke'Bryan Hayes. And man, does it seem like the wind is out of the Pirates' sails already here after 3 games?
Well, sure. If you're looking for major storylines, Mitch Keller did not give himself a successful birthday present, and of course, Ke'Bryan Hayes is on the disabled list or whatever, the injured list, whatever they call it anymore. We're going to party like it's 2015, Alan, and we'll call it the DL just for old time's sake. But for all intents and purposes, the way things are going, that's not good. The errors are still not good. They've got 5 errors as a team in 3 games, which really cost them 1 run earlier in this game. But when you look at things, there still is some promise. There still is some good. But from the outset, a lot of the main things, the big things the Pirates are highlighting to be successful, not going their way. And that's not really boding well for them. And that's a good reason why 1-2 is what you're looking at right now.
Yeah, and obviously, it's not like 3 games, buries them or anything like that. And do get 1 win against the Cubs. So, it's obviously very early, and it's difficult to draw big sweeping conclusions from 3 games, but specifically, what did you see from Mitch Keller today? Last just 3 innings, threw 77 pitches, had 4 walks. What are you seeing from him, and what does he need to do to tap into that potential that's made him one of their best pitching prospects for the last 5 years?
I mean, you and I both looked at the Pirates game notes, and we saw how he ended last season, 11 scoreless innings, which really speaks to itself, and it's hard to say, especially in a COVID season, how that's going to transition into whatever the heck, however many days it is that have separated anything. But when you look at things for Keller, I mean, it was command. I mean, you have an opposing mound pitcher in Zach Davies, who they're very familiar with his time with the Milwaukee Brewers, and he threw 9 pitches in the first inning, 7 for strikes. And you look at Keller, and he put a 3 and a 1 next to that, 31, or somewhere to that effect, and just it's not good when you have 4 walks, you have 6 batters that get to 3-ball counts, and you're laboring, you're giving up hits that when you do find the strike zone or middle of the plate or thereabouts where it's really easy to hit. And when you're a Cubs team that really likes working counts and making these pitchers earn their strikes, it really doesn't help when you're not finding the strike zone with much regularity. And when you do, it's in a position where the Cubs players can attack. And you saw that, and even second inning withstanding, even the second inning, which was a 1-2-3, you're still at 19, 20 pitches. And I get it, it's your first start out of spring training where a lot of times you are going to labor, so take this with a grain of salt. But the Cubs have traditionally been a tough out. They've been a tough team for Keller in his few starts that he's had. And this afternoon, just not really too much, just a lot of up, a lot of down, a lot of inconsistency. I will credit him the way he ended that 3rd inning with stranding those 2 runners in scoring position to at least keep the Pirates in the game early, which led to some of the opportunities they had later. But they wouldn't have had to be in these opportunities later if he had pitched a little bit more of a cleaner game.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on that. There's a lot of themes here that I think can it be impactful. The first game coming north from spring is often tough for pitchers when you have to adjust to maybe a 40 or 50 degree difference in temperature from what you've been used to at spring training. And so that happens a lot. I talked about that after the first game, in which it didn't seem like any of the pitchers were very crisp for either team. And so a little bit warmer day today in Chicago than that was on Thursday, but still that's definitely something that takes an adjustment. And, I do think that that's, way too early to sort of cast any aspersions on Mitch Keller's season or his future. But man, if the Pirates really wanted to jump on things with some enthusiasm out of the gate, him pitching like the pitcher he can be right now sure would have been a a really strong way for them to do that. Obviously didn't get a great start today. And of course, the other big piece of news on that front, Ke'Bryan Hayes lands on the injured list with a wrist injury. Just how big of a loss is that for this team as they work their way through the early part of this season?
Well, I mean, you look at line of protection, and the Pirates are obviously in a rebuilding mode, even if the brass does not want to say that R word necessarily themselves on too many occasions. But Brian Hayes is a guy that commands the respect of any single player on the other side of the diamond and can be pitched accordingly to. And when you lose him, obviously you have the abilities that he's shown defensively, offensively. He's been a threat as well, and that's one more threat out of the lineup. And in the short term, it was a little bit harder to notice because of course, Evans had 3 hits today, including a really nice infield-ish single that he had there that kind of kept that inning going and really was one of the keys that knocked Davies out of the game. So in the short term, we're going to see more of Evans. We're going to see more of Wilmer Difo, which will be interesting to see how the former National responds to that kind of a challenge. But of course, when you don't have Hazen with what he's able to do, which changes the game in multiple facets, that's of course a huge loss. And it goes without saying that that's going to be a huge loss. Now, how that goes with the team that is young, looking for opportunities, and now there's new players are going to have these opportunities. It's on them to take the ball and run with it.
Yeah, and I think Evans showed some promise in a pretty limited sample last season before his injury. So, I mean, that's a guy that you don't mind getting a look at. I'm not sure what the Pirates would be getting out of trotting Wilmer Difo out there every day. Obviously, this is a season where the primary focus for this team is, getting guys that they're identifying guys that can be parts of their future, and they're trying to build the trade value up of guys that they already know aren't. I'm not sure Defoe's ever going to have a ton of trade value at this point in his career. So, yeah, I mean, I think Evans at least gives them someone that's a bit interesting. Did have the air, of course, that turned out to be very costly with the infield drawn in as well. And Sam Howard on the mound and the unfortunate recipient of that unearned run. But on the whole, Pirates starting pitching, I think everybody knew coming into this season was going to be a bit of a struggle. And then Stephen Brault got hurt, making that an even bigger struggle. But the bullpen has looked very solid through 3 games. Another really strong performance from that unit today. Zach, is this sustainable from these guys? I mean, it's not like this is Hanrahan and Grilly and Melanson and Tony Watson back. I mean, these are relatively unheralded guys, but they're performing at a really high level.
And sure, looking at the high level today, when you go 5 innings, you allow the hit, you allow that run-ish. I mean, no fly ball outs from the bullpen, 7 ground ball outs. When you look at everything, all things considered, that's pretty impressive. A little uneven, 3 walks, 3. There's the 2 wild pitches, which, doesn't necessarily help things. Kind of a theme of the day that things are a little bit on the wilder side. But the Pirates bullpen for a lot of seasons has been its strength. And right now it kind of has to be if the starting pitching is just going to be very lackadaisical. Now, of course, here we are. It's April 4th. It's, again, theme of the month, theme of the day, flavor of the week, really, really early returns. But when your starting pitching is not necessarily executing at the level you like to, it puts a lot of pressure on the pen. And a lot of credit. You saw some good things. I mean, Chris Stratton, his 1 inning, 9 pitches, got out of there, made his impact. Underwood showed some really good things. He got stretched out a little bit, maybe a little bit more than the team would have liked, and they kind of paid the price for that a little bit. Howard really seemed to labor, and even that double play really looked shaky. He got it, but it was very, very shaky if you're really trying to pick things out. But, I mean, it comes down to it seems like the bullpen has the right mentality early. At this point, it's on them to sustain it, and things aren't going to get any easier moving forward. Obviously, you have so many games starting out the season against divisional rivals, which, of course, is something the Pirates have had their struggles with, even in their successful lean years. So it's going to be tough sledding going ahead, but at least it's going to be a lot of familiar opponents where the bullpen can kind of gain some confidence. And really, that's what you want.
Yeah, and I think, the usual theory of a bullpen is that if you need them to go 6 innings or 5 innings as they did today, on occasion they can do that. If you need them to do that every game, they'll probably get worn down over the course of a season. Now, 14-man pitching staff right now for the Pirates, so that can take some of that pressure off. But do they need to find a starting pitcher that's going to consistently go deep into games? I mean, it's not like that's any of these guys calling cards, even if they are, healthy and in midseason form and not dealing with their first trip to the cold in April. Is that a significant part of the puzzle for this team?
Well, sure, and I think it also goes back to the offseason where injuries happen, and it's really ironic because last year it was when are we going to start this season? How stretched out can these guys really get? And now this season it's getting physically and mentally adjusted to what could potentially, yes, with COVID, be a 162 game season. So again, you're going through that different challenge, or maybe the body and the mind are telling you different things. Then you add the things like the weather, you add things like getting stretched out where the hitters are ready, but the pitchers necessarily aren't as quick and ready to make the trip up north. And you've covered baseball, Alan. You know the drill. You know how tough and cliche these things can get in the month of April. But it's true, especially with a young team, a bunch of guys that aren't used to necessarily starting the season this early, that really haven't been stretched out, finally are being believed in and finally have the confidence in. And in the offseason, maybe it's nicer if you as a general manager, you as a team, you get a couple arms, a couple veteran arms that are more used to it. I mean, I think that reinforcement is coming. We had a couple of those in spring training that maybe aren't fully stretched out yet, that are getting towards those processes. Of course, there's injuries along the way, and that raises the challenge. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the starters to execute, and really, it's going to come down also as a manager for Shelton and the team just to try to organize things, make sure these guys don't get tired. And again, another cliche, make sure you realize this thing's a marathon. I know that maybe expectations are low for this team, but that doesn't mean that people in the clubhouse feel the same way, and it's just treating it as such.
You have 11 innings through 3 games for the Pirates starting pitchers. Chad Kuhl and Mitch Keller both went 3, and Tyler Anderson went 5. And then the 3-game series coming up against the Reds, it'll be JT Brubaker and Trevor Cahill on Monday and Tuesday. Kuhl gets the ball again on Wednesday, and that'll set up Anderson for the home opener back at PNC Park again against the Cubs on Thursday. So they just had the one off day here early. Usually you think of April as a time where there's a bunch of off days built into the schedule. It doesn't work that way for the Pirates right now, as they're just rolling through. Again, 4-3 losers to the Cubs here on Easter Sunday as they fall to 1-2 on the season and lose their first series in the Central Division. Zach, we talked about Mitch Keller. We talked about Brian Hayes and the sort of young guys that are the biggest sort of reservoirs of promise for this Pirates season. But I've been pretty impressed with Colin Moran's play through 3 games, made the position switch to a full-time first baseman this year, but it's the bat that's really caught my eye. Had a 2-run home run tonight, had a very good approach, appears to be pretty patient. Is that a guy that the Pirates can salvage some value from if he has a strong 2021 season?
I would say it remains to be determined, Alan, because you saw something very similar last year when the season started where Moran was tearing the cover off of the ball and then things just stopped. And of course, now that Hayes is out for at least 10 games, we're going to have to see if that's going to affect how he's being pitched, which I know you might not want to necessarily talk about that in April either, but everything's kind of checkers and chess at this point. And it's what was most impressive wasn't necessarily the home run, but it was a 3-0 count. He easily could have hit that 3-0 pitch and been given the green light, and he decided not to do it. And he had a really good opposite field approach today and got a little bit of a benefit from the wind on that home run, but it doesn't matter. When everybody looks at the home run, they're not going to say, oh, well, it was because of the wind. They're going to look at the home run, and really credit to Brian Reynolds keeping things going, and it seemed like Davies was really rolling through the lineup on the Cubs end. He was really effectively mixing his sinker. His changeup was a big piece, especially the second time through the lineup, and it seemed like a lot of the Pirates were uncomfortable with his off-speed stuff, and it seemed like things kind of started to change and momentum changed. So I was impressed with Moran's approach. I was also impressed Polanco, not necessarily a guy that walks a lot. He's already got 3 walks this season, 2 today, which is very unlike what you and I have seen out of Gregory.
Probably should have had 3. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely should have had 3. He should have had 3 on the first 4 pitches, and that was a huge game turner. We'll get to that. But regardless of that, I mean, if a lot of the veterans, so-called, Moran at this point I'd classify as a veteran, of course Polanco, just really, really impressed, even if Polanco's average isn't the greatest right now, just impressed with both of their mindsets at the plate. It seems like it's healthy, it's willing to prove something, but Moran almost is too patient, and that's a good thing. He was able to find success. He got deep in accounts, especially those latter two at bats where he was able to turn the bat and put it the right way and get the Pirates some runs and some clear momentum. So it'll be interesting to see if Moran can sustain this, which was the one thing that didn't happen last year, although how much you really count a season like last year in general was extremely relative.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the very difficult things about the way this last offseason went was how much weight that general managers could put on what happened in 2020 when it came to their decision-making process for who they wanted to have and who they wanted to have in prominent roles this season. Moran through 3 games is the numbers look good. He's got 3 walks, a home run, a double, and 3 hits, slugging 700. He weighted on base average of 489. Yeah, that'll do. If he could keep that up over the course of a season, that would be, well, those are MVP kind of numbers, actually. And, there's a very good chance that Colin Moran becomes this team's offensive MVP. I mean, Brian Hayes has the chance to be a star player that I don't think Moran does. He certainly has a ton of upside, but he's a young guy, hasn't played that much. I expect the league to punch back at him when he does get healthy again this year in some type of way. That's natural for young players. Brian Reynolds and Kevin Newman, they're obviously Adam Frazier, professional hitters able to generally have a high batting average. But when it comes to power, Moran is really the only guy the Pirates have that has proven to be a consistent threat. And so if they're going to get home runs like they did today that really kept them in that ball game, he's going to be that guy that's going to have to provide it. Not a franchise-changing trajectory like a really good season from Keller or Hayes would be, but I think awfully important to the results on the field this year for this team. And, of course, I think as is the case with every other player that you could call a veteran, if he has a good season, then he immediately becomes a guy that could become available as Ben Cherington continues to make moves closer to the trade deadline, and they can continue to add to that prospect pool. We hinted at it earlier a bit, but man, not a banner day for the home plate umpire there in Wrigley, as a number of questionable ball and strike calls went against the Pirates. Ramon De Jesus, the home plate ump on this crew, and Polanco victimized there in the 8th inning. First 4 pitches I thought were balls. Certainly 3 of the first 4, only got 2 of them called. And then again, Kimbrel gets a gift to end the game in the 9th on a pitch that was a foot off the plate, probably at least, certainly several baseballs away. Zach, I mean, this is something that looks like Major League Baseball is attempting to rectify as they've begun plans last season. They worked with the Atlantic League on a robot balls and strikes call, or however you want to call it, using the TrackMan system. And now it's supposed to be filtering into the minor leagues this season when they do get underway. But what's your opinion? Do we need to see balls and strikes be automated, or is there a better way to go forward?
Whatever makes the game quicker. Honestly, at this point, it just seems like baseball's in such a perspective that we want to quick speed the game up. We want to speed the game up, but all the things that they're doing to try to speed the game up are slowing the game down. I mean, I get that you're having these 1-out pitchers now become 3, but now they're laboring on the mound. Now they're taking extra time, and that time that would be a pitching substitution all of a sudden becomes the Jeopardy think music, waiting for the guy to throw the next pitch. So then what are you going to do? You're going to time the guy, and then you're going to make him nervous, and then he's going to lose his contract. I mean, there's that aspect of it, too. From an umpiring perspective, this is the same umpire that tossed Eric Shelton out of the game last year, and just inconsistencies on his part. And, yeah, the Pirates definitely got hosed in some calls. Yes, there's the human element. What the value of the human element to the game is really relative to each person and their baseball experience. I'm trying to think how these robot umpires are going to work. Is it going to be like tennis where you see someone challenging the out call and then you're waiting for a video to show the strike call and show where it's at? How much time difference does that get versus a this or a this or something like that? It's relative. I mean, for now, you're going to have those larger than life, like the Joe West personalities maybe like the Greg Gibson personalities, umpires that have reputations of doing things their way and doing things by the beat of their drum. Maybe you have one of those guys in the auxiliary press box or something monitoring the balls and strikes, but you do lose that human element. I mean, usually bad calls go both ways. One team gets a bad call, another team gets a bad call. Maybe it's just the Pirates are a younger team, maybe because it's that subconscious not having veterans, whether it's a skipper, whether it's players. Maybe subconsciously that call might not be given because there's not really much of a leg to stand on. It's really difficult to know what goes through these umpires' brains. Although you also had World Series. I mean, what was that Marlins World Series where pitches were outside 2 or 3 feet outside the plate? They're being called strikes the entire time, so pitchers just adjust. Really, it's on the hitters, it's on the pitchers to adjust at least for now until some changes are made. Personally, it might happen for me though. I'm not for or against it. I guess that's a long answer to a really short question. I'm not for. I'm not against it. I kind of am like Missouri. You kind of got to show me.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about what does it look like, and that matters a lot as to the end product. I don't want anything that slows the game down. I'm right with you on that one. The games are absurdly long as it is. Although today's seem to move along okay, generally, 3 hours roughly. That's about as good as you get anymore. But still, yeah, I don't want anything that's going to slow the game down. And the system they used in the Atlantic League last season was, not perfect. I don't think anything's going to be perfect, but I think when I talk to players, I think the thing that the players want the most is consistency. And I think that's the easiest thing for a computer to do, right? The computer is going to be consistent every time. It's going to call a pitch in a certain location, a strike or a ball 100% of the time. And I think that will help both. It'll help both sets of players. It'll help the pitchers and it'll help the batters. And I think anytime you're able to provide that, if you ask a pitcher, that's what they're going to say they want. If you ask a hitter, that's what they're going to say they want. So if you're given that, that's going to make everybody happy, I think then it's kind of a no-brainer. I also think that the strike zone on the TV screen has made, listen, the umpires do a pretty good job. This is a difficult job. And it's not like they're out there getting 30% of them wrong or something like that. It is a generally a pretty significant exception rather than the rule. But I think that strike zone on TV has made it just clear that, look, it's really hard for a person to stand there and call balls and strikes consistently when it's coming in 100 miles an hour. The pitches are moving. It's difficult. And so if we can make it better, then I'm all for it. And man, to me, I just think the human element brings the human bias in with it. And today's game looked to me an awful like an umpire on a travel day when it's cold outside. They really want to go home. And I hate that part of it, right? That part of it, that suggestion that that's what's going on, that's gross to me. Like that's not a level playing field if that's what's happening. Not saying that it was, but I think when you have missed calls in that situation, that's where the human element leads you. And so that's why I'm for it. But I'm with you that it needs to be in a way that makes sense and it needs to be done in a way that doesn't slow down the game. And implementing new technology isn't exactly Major League Baseball's forte. So maybe we'll wait and see what it looks like before we give it a full-blooded endorsement. But in general, I'm in favor of the concept. Zach, anything else on today's game you feel like we need to touch on? I know you had some notes there. Again, we'll get to the comment here too. Dave Gormley, good friend of the channel, says offense D-, defense D, starters D+, bullpen A. Yeah, that's probably fair. Maybe a little rough on the offense. To me, I don't think they've been that bad. Not prolific, but pretty much in line with my expectations for this offense. They've given themselves a chance in all 3 games here from an offensive perspective. Yeah, the rest of that feels about right. Zach, anything you've got or you want to react to that?
Well, sure. I mean, first of all, going back to our robot thing, since obviously that's the flavor of the month. Just the other thing, I mean, yeah, there's the human element. You actually can argue. I mean, I'm still trying to picture a robot umpire ejecting a manager, which is something I actually would really, really like to see. But beyond that, I mean, from a pitching coach perspective, the pitching coach will always meet with the day starter before. How much of that is spent on, oh, such and such is the umpire tonight? Maybe if you put it here, it might, and then in the back of your head, there's even more to think about. So that kind of goes both ways. In terms of grades, defense might be a fail at this point, might not be a D. Just 5 errors in 3 games is atrocious. The offense, I'd put it about a C. But I'd say it's about average. I think D plus is a little bit harsh, but especially given you have to temper your expectations given the team that's on the field right now in its current state. The one thing I also want to mention, the seventh inning, the base running was not good. Just you have to be on your toes on a line drive. You can't get doubled up, especially when it's a throw across the diamond. Just a really lazy. You fundamentally learn this throughout your entire baseball career. Mistake by Alford. Just you can't do that, especially in a game that's close where you're fighting for a chance to share your piece of the pie in first place in the NL Central. I don't care if it's 3 games out. You have a young team that's trying to find confidence. It's a young team that's without one of its stars, so it gives a lot of people a chance to grow. And you said yourself, with the days off, you're looking for momentum. What better way to get momentum against a Cubs team that's traditionally given you fits? Traditionally, hashtag plantar fasciitis. Traditionally, Joe Madden called back there had to. Traditionally, been a tough out. Traditionally, makes the starting pitchers work. Would have been a very good way to start the season. Take 2 out of 3 against the Cubs anytime you take that result, and just plays like that are why this team fell short in this game. So, all in all, some ugly, some not so great, some good, a little bit of in each camp, which is about what we would expect from this Pirates team. 1-2 overall seems about right. Otherwise, Alan, it feels like 2015 all over again. Yourself and myself back in the press box. It's great to do this, and hopefully this was not a one and done.
No, yeah, we'll definitely have you back, and I appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday. Beautiful day outside, so we won't keep you or everybody else. But yeah, 4-3 Pirates losers, and they fall to 1-2 on the season. Again, right back at it tomorrow evening, 6:40 start time. They're going all over the board with the start times these days. In Cincinnati, JT Brubaker on the mound against Jose De Leon and the Cincinnati Reds. We'll be back with more on Pittsburgh postgame this week. Don't have the schedule yet, but stay tuned. On the Twitter machine there. You can, of course, follow the channel at PGH Sports Live, myself at @Saunders_PGH, and you can catch Zac at Zachary M. Weiss, and, of course, all his great work for our channel covering Duquesne Athletics at Pittsburgh Sports Now is all there as well. Zac, thanks for coming on. Appreciate having you, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
Sounds great. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, Zac Weiss. I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching. Pirates 4-3 losers. We'll do it again soon. Next time on Pittsburgh